What's going on, everybody? My name is Hasia Muhammad, and you are listening to The Actor's Instrument. This week's episode has been a long time coming. I've wanted to have Erin Fritch on as a guest since last season, but all members of the SAG negotiating committee, of which Erin was a part of, was under a press blackout mandate, unable to comment or do any interviews during the strike, which is, of course, when I launched the podcast. But the strike is over. Erin is here, and today we're going to get into all things post-strike. Now, as an actor, Erin's career has spanned over a decade. Some of her credits include her Broadway debut in the revival of Neil Simon's Barefoot in the Park. Fun fact, I did that play in high school. It was a lot of fun. She has made guest star appearances on House of Cards, The Good Fight, Will and Grace, Law and Order, and Ugly Betty. And she has appeared in over 20 national commercials. Working. Erin, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Nice to see you. And I believe we met because we worked together on a job
Yes,
last year.
on an industrial.
That's right.
Yeah, I was literally just putting together my commercial reel this week because, as you know, A3 went under and they were my reps.
I'm
So
sorry.
it's
I was a longtime Abrams client back in the day, but I feel
Mhm.
for all of you. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was like, I guess I need to put this reel together because I need to find some other folks. But it's all good. Honestly, I'm a big believer that what's meant to happen will happen. So we'll roll with it.
Absolutely. You'll land on your feet, I have no doubt.
There we go. Okay, so as I just alluded to, you were on the SAG negotiating committee. Huge responsibility. The strike, I mean, it was not just affected our industry, it affected so many other industries. It was top of mind, just sort of in the zeitgeist for the latter half of 2023. Um, Before we dive into like what went well, what didn't well, could you just describe what your job was as a member of the negotiating committee? Like, what were your actual responsibilities?
Yeah, so I think it's important for people to know. I'll just start by saying I've been a member of SAG-AFTRA for 24 years. And the union SAG-AFTRA, it was SAG. We merged with AFTRA, so it's actually a joint union right now. Um, and people have this idea. It's kind of this big entity, the union. And we have wonderful staff who support us in a million ways, but the union really is its members, and that includes negotiating committees. So while we have amazing lawyers and staff leading the charge in terms of like professional negotiators, we're the ones with skin in the game. We're the ones who work these contracts and impact it. So um, there's basically a process called W&W, wages and working conditions, where any member and in good standing, which means you've paid your dues, can come and just express frustrations with the contract, propose ideas for new ways to change the contract, and a committee is formed out of that, who eventually becomes the negotiating committee. I had some experience sitting on commercial negotiating committees, one of our other contracts, so got selected to join this group, which was a really, really incredible, hardworking, special group of people who encompassed all aspects of job position, that work, that TV theatrical contract. Everyone from a singer, a dancer, a stunt coordinator, folks who are bona fide movie stars, series regulars, background performers, folks like me who kind of go from job to job and work multiple contracts and work as guest stars, that sort of thing. So we were really covered. It's a national committee, so we also had a lot of wonderful geographic representation. And it's our job to basically process all of the different proposals that come out of that W&W process from across the country, make our priorities with the help and advisement of our staff, and basically put together a proposal to pass across to our bargaining partner on day one, who in this instance is the AMPTP, which is comprised of all the major studios. I'm sure we all heard a lot about them last year, the big bad AMPTP. Netflix, Hulu, Netflix, Disney, NBC, Universal, et cetera, HBO, all the big guns in the business. And then we worked together It's a collective bargaining process, and they come in with requests, we come in with requests, and you go back and forth and try to arrive at an agreement. Um, we have a staff member who always says the sign of a good negotiation is everyone walks away just a little bit unhappy. But it's a arduous process. It takes place in Los Angeles. I'm a New York resident, so it means kind of packing up your bags and heading out to
Mhm.
LA for several weeks. We had a 3.5 week span, and obviously, as you know, the history of how things went down, it was not enough time to get it done. And we
Yeah.
really stood strong with our demands and took the time we needed to get the contract we needed for our members.
Well, shoot. Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Somebody has to do it. And honestly, I think actually meeting you was really great for me also because I think it helped me to like tune in a little bit more. We're so focused on our personal careers and on what we need to do, and like you said, like we are in this together.
Mhm.
And so really appreciate what you and everyone else on the committee did for those 118 days.
Crazy, right?
That's a long time.
It's a
That
long time.
that's like 30% of the length of the Montgomery bus boycott.
It's a good stat.
That's a long
Wow.
time.
That's a long time. It's a long time, and it's a long time to, to ask people to stand strong and hold solidarity and not work. It's important to note like other contracts were fully operating during the strike. So it's important to make the distinction that that was just TV theatrical work,
Yeah.
motion pictures and television shows. But that impacts a lot of our members. The union has a bit over 160,000 members nationwide, and a full work stoppage at that level has big, really personal impacts. And it's something that we did not take lightly as a committee. You don't call a strike unless you absolutely need to call a strike.
Yeah. No, no doubt, no doubt. Um, so for you personally, what were some of the bigger issues that you really wanted to see taken care of during the negotiation?
Um, for me, it was kind of the three biggies for me, I would say AI. AI, AI. I mean, that could probably be all three. Um, just the big existential crisis of artificial intelligence that we really
Yeah.
needed to basically right from the ground up. There was no language in our pre-existing contract covering it, and the technology is just propelling at such a rapid pace. So that was a huge priority. Also, just outsized raises in our minimums. There's this thing called pattern bargaining, where year after year, the DGA, the Directors Guild, and the WGA, the Writers Guild, who also went on strike, they also negotiate with the AMPTP. And there's, these patterns of years past where they get X amount. So you follow the pattern. And
Hmm.
this year, I think everybody kind of said that's just not going to cut it, because the raises that we were getting were not keeping up with inflation. And as we all know, inflation has been a beast these last few years. And so it doesn't mean anything in real practical dollars to give members a raise and to fight and negotiate for a raise if in real dollars they're making less than they made 3 years ago or 6 years ago. So that was a huge priority, because that to me is that's actual money you're putting into members' pockets. The AI stuff is a little bit more big picture, and it doesn't really affect all members right now in the here and now, but at some point we'll all probably get on set and get scanned or asked to be scanned. So the raises felt like the most immediate thing we could do to put more money in members' pockets. And
Sure.
then the third thing I would say is raising the caps. And what I mean by the caps is, we have one of the beautiful things of being a union members is that we get pension and health contributions paid by our employers on top of our salaries. Right? It doesn't come out of our own pocket. That is something that they have to pay for, and that's of huge value. To members. But in the TV theatrical contract, there were caps established after which a certain monetary threshold, your future earnings, let's say residuals on a TV show or whatever, um, after they hit these really low caps, outdated caps, they don't have to pay pension and health on those future earnings. So right, really messed up, and those caps hadn't changed in a bit over 30 years. So
Jeez.
there was just a lot of pieces, and for me, the pension and health is such a big thing because health insurance, you know, I could go on about the injustices of,
Hmm.
sorry, how and why, we don't just have universal health care, but we don't, and it is, in this country, it's up to our employers to provide it. And in our unique instances as actors, we have to meet an earnings threshold to qualify for what is a fantastic health plan. But to me, that is one of the fundamental reasons to be a union member, to have those vital benefits. And I was really focused on doing whatever we could to make more money available to go into
Right,
those plans.
right. Yeah, I mean, you're preaching to the choir. This week, so I was on Actors Equity Insurance
Uh-huh.
last calendar year. I got married and took some time off.
Congratulations.
Thank you,
That's
thank you.
exciting.
Yeah, but I lost my insurance. Didn't have enough weeks.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So yeah, so I went onto the marketplace, and then the marketplace, they did this thing where they like, I don't know, I guess their system just runs like a check at regular intervals to see like what your income is. And for some reason, the system thought that I only made a certain amount of money, which was much below what I actually made. So I get a letter that says, "Hey, we see that you actually make this amount, so now your health insurance is free. If this is a mistake, please call us." So I'm like, this is a mistake. And some people listening might be like, "Dude, get the free health insurance." But guess what? If you get caught, you could owe back pay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's not
It
worth it. Yeah.
No, no, not worth it at all. And so the reason why I bring this up is, if you could imagine me talking to like the New York City health random person, trying to explain to them what I do for work and why I'm unable. They're like, "So what do you make each month?"
You're like, I don't
I
know.
was like,
I couldn't
I'm
tell
like,
you.
"Listen, really depends." I was like, "I can't tell you what I'm gonna make next month." I'm like, "I can tell you what I made the last 3 months because I've made it." But they're like, "Well, what do you think you're gonna make the same this year as you did last year?" And I'm like, "Ma'am, I do not know." I'm like, "I'm doing
I
my
know.
best."
It's
I would
so
like
hard.
to.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really hard to it's really hard to explain to anybody not outside of our business just how erratic it can be. And just because you had a banner year last year, it's like that's because I booked that big national commercial or I got that big
Yep.
guest. That may not be it for the next year. I mean, I always
Yep.
say that the career path, like the graph of most actors, the 1% that kind of propels to the top. But most of us are just kind of an up and down and an up and down, and we have peaks and
Yep.
valleys, and you have to figure out how to sustain it. And I think we all have to, we all have our own tricks for being smart with the money when we make it and making it stretch.
Yep.
Um, but again, we need to be putting more money in members' pockets, and so that
Yep.
is a fundamental core job of the union is to negotiate fair working conditions and wages for its members and wages that keep up with inflation. So
Yeah. No,
yeah.
super important. I mean, I posted on Instagram yesterday. I bought deodorant. It was $14 for a two
What?
pack of $14
Oh,
for a 2 pack of Old Spice. Like, it used to be like $9.
well, someone was even saying the other day, or I don't know where I read the article, but like fast food, like this idea of something that used to be so cheap is now like you go and order two cheeseburgers at McDonald's and a fry, and it's like $40, or it's surge
Yeah, no,
pricing, all of that crazy stuff.
it's ridiculous. So I really
Anyway,
appreciate you guys fighting for that one.
yeah,
Because yeah, I mean, if our wages don't keep up, if we're looking at these pitiful residuals, and there's, like you said, no further contributions to our pension and health, I mean, our industry is hard enough.
I
You know
think
what I'm
it's
saying?
important. Yeah, and it's important for people to because I think to folks who don't do what we do, it's easy to say, like, oh, but you're actors, you love it, you love your craft. And what I would say is that a labor of love is still labor. And we're
Mm,
workers. We are
mm,
workers. We go to work. Our craft is our work. And just because it's artistic in nature and we're not sitting at a desk or behind a computer, it's not work. And so that's
yeah,
why we need workplace protections.
no, one
And
hundred
that's
percent,
that's where our union comes in.
100%. And it sounds like from the three core issues that you described, it sounds like the strike and the negotiation process was ultimately a success for you from where you were coming from.
Absolutely. I would say we achieved even more than I thought. we could or would. I think it was a massive success. The value that we walked away with, over $1 billion, more than 3 times the value of our last several contracts. So, just from a monetary point of view, it was huge. And then you
Yeah.
look at the AI piece in terms of the actual nitty gritty language point of view. And we basically filled in blank pages that didn't exist before in a really thick, complicated contract and established the first ever AI protections, which include the principles of consent and compensation, which are huge.
Yeah.
The
Yeah. Yeah.
performer saying, I understand what you're doing, I consent to it. I understand it's going to be within these parameters, and you're going to pay me for it, um, so that we're not being replaced. Technology is not going anywhere, unfortunately, and we can't stop AI. I think we have to find a way to work with it that doesn't undermine our humanity and take away our jobs.
Yeah, I mean, I saw Tyler Perry had like an $800 million studio that he put on hold because he saw some video on Twitter of an AI program and he was like, "Whoa, like this is too much."
Yeah, the AI, I think there's so much, and this kind of happened a little bit during our ratification. I think because members, there was like kind of a freak out of people being like, are we doing enough? Did we go far enough? And I get it. It's scary. It's really scary and it's really complicated to understand, right? But
Yeah.
how they're using it, at least now, isn't that different than how they use it, let's say, in animation or CGI. And in a way, we've been using elements of AI for years and years and years.
Yeah.
And it is scary. It's really scary when you see a deep fake. It's really scary when the technology is used to hurt people and harm people. And so I think that's when people go, whoa. But I also think like we can't forget the impact of the audience and the audience's desire for human performance and human connection. I remember like out on our strike, we had some signs like AI doesn't have childhood trauma or AI can't cry on cue. And this idea of, I think the consumer, at least right now, where the technology is smart enough to tell the difference and say, yeah, I don't want that. I don't want to watch a robot. I want
Yeah.
to watch real people give
Yeah. Yeah.
meaningful, moving performances.
Yeah. No, I was speaking with Michael Boatman and he said something similar that he had like his nephew or a mentee of his works in that field and he was like, you don't really have anything to worry about. It's just not real and people will feel that. Um so it sounds do you feel like at this moment that actors can chill a little bit? Like cuz some people are genuinely like freaking out.
Yes,
Like
and I think there's also people who just believe or actually had a misunderstanding that the goal of the strike or what we would like what a union is and isn't able to negotiate in terms of
mhm,
a contract and what's out of our jurisdiction, that we were going to say no AI ever. Like no, you can't use it, and that's just not realistic because guess
yeah.
what? They're going to use it and it's going to either move with us or it's going to move without us. And we'd rather
Mm,
it move with us and have it be a way that our members can profit off of it. um, and that's where like the federal government actually comes in, and there's a lot of important work being done now to pass these bills about your right of publicity and your right of right of your own your likeness and your image. And there's a deep fake bill right now, and if we can kind of get laws that regulate kind of ethical use, right, it's only going to um, compound the work and the language we have in our contracts. The union cannot tell an independent movie studio, don't do this, or how, we can't tell people how to
right.
run their business. Our job, the job as a union, is to negotiate, again, fair wages and safe working conditions. And so, personally speaking, just for myself, I don't feel worried that I'm going to be replaced by AI in this moment. I think we have to keep our eye on the ball. We have
Mhm,
we wrote into our contract that the AMPTP has to meet with us every 6 months so we can have discussions if we start hearing about things or abuses. But I think the language that we've achieved far exceeds any other business right now or any other um, employee model in terms of protections. And I think we really set the gold standard for what AI protection needs to look like. So I, for one, feel pretty good. And we're working more and more about that stuff in the commercial space, and especially for voiceover performers, which, as you know, that's very scary because it's so easy.
yeah.
And there's a lot, that the union is doing to protect those performers as well.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's scary, and also often scary is just unknown.
That's right.
Like I imagine what our members were probably thinking 25 years ago at the start of the tech boom, and like what that must have been terrifying. But now look, we have streaming, and we have, there are people who are really making a name for themselves through social media. Um, for me, I think I agree with you. It's like because I saw some videos of like there was this like a fair made like an advertisement totally out of AI, and it was like this is it doesn't
The worst.
yeah, I was like this looks like some kind of like dream weird like it just looked weird like it was
Mhm.
like so unreal for me though, and where I think there's a little nervousness is like where I think audiences would really get down with it is say you got to watch your favorite TV show and put your face in there.
Mm,
What I'm saying? Like, if like, what if I don't? I'm not trying to give y'all no ideas, but let's
yeah,
say you're watching Netflix and or let's say Disney and you're watching like Star Wars and you're like, actually, like, I want to be such and such character,
that's
and,
interesting.
and then the computer just like puts your face on it. Now you get to watch yourself, or like somebody that like a friend of yours or like maybe your like nemesis or something, like you're like, oh, I'm gonna make them the bad guy. I think that that's something that people would probably get behind. I don't know how feasible it is, but also at the same time I'm like, even if that's an element of it, like you said, it's coming, and it's best that we move with it. And I really appreciate that you clarified the job of the union is not to tell necessarily studios what they can and can't do, but to make sure that if we're working for them, it's safe and we're being compensated appropriately. I think that's
That's
a
right.
yeah,
That's right. And really, if you look at the language of what we achieved, it's kind of incredible. It's this idea that you can get scanned, you can have we're calling it a digital replica of you. But that's now you, and you kind of, that's another entity. It's like a digital you that can make money. So if you're not on, if they're using it instead of you, they still have to pay you. There's really strong language that they cannot replace background. They have a
yeah.
certain number of background performers that are required on any union set. We have language that states they have to hire humans up to that amount. Um,
Hmm.
and if they're using the replica, on a day that you're not there's compensation, and it's not just consent, it's informed consent, and it's clear
Right.
and it's conspicuous, and it's not buried deep in your contract where you can't see it. It's laid out, it's very clear. It can only be used for the episode you're filming or for whatever the intention is of what's been negotiated.
Hmm.
Anything outside of that, they have to come back to you, they have to get your consent again, and they have to compensate again. So let's say they're like doing a digital scan of you for an episode of, I don't know, some hit like a Dick Wolf show, and because there's going to be this crazy stunt or whatever it is, and they do it, and it's going to be for that single episode. If your character recurs and you're now several episodes later, they're like, you know what, we don't need Hasiem to come in, but we've got the digital double or the
Yeah.
digital replica. They have to get your consent, and you have to be compensated. So I think
Listen,
that's pretty great, the
mostly sounds
idea.
like a little residual income stream to me.
Well, sure, it's another way, and think about it. You can be off doing, your show on the road right now, and your digital replica can be making money without you ever stepping foot in a studio or
No,
on a set.
exactly.
Now, the thing is, we don't want, and I don't certainly prescribe to an idea that just our digital replica, like, we want to work, we want to
Yeah, yeah,
interact with humans, we want to perform face to face. I'm just saying they're only using it right now in a way that is very, it's technical,
yeah.
it's not really changing the heart and soul of your performance. And again, you're going to have that, you're going to be told how they intend to use it, so you are in the driver's seat of saying, you know what, no, or great, yeah, that doesn't seem like a big deal. De-aging software, great, you need to make me look younger so you don't have to hire a different actor. Like, I can be a younger version of myself. Okay, yeah, that's okay.
The big thing for me post strike is so now at the time of recording this, we're 6 months out. And I think a lot of actors are wondering, was it all worth it? On paper, $1 billion deal, like you said, the best package we've gotten in the history of our union. Um, but now we're all feeling this squeeze, right? And it's on multiple levels. Casting is feeling the squeeze, actors are feeling a squeeze, producers are feeling a squeeze. It feels, and maybe we're just making this up, but it feels like it's almost harder now to be an actor than it was before. Scripted television has, plummeted dramatically. Where do you stand on that? Like, because now we're a little far enough out that we're seeing the ramifications begin to fall into place.
Yeah. I think it's a couple things. I think what you're saying is absolutely true. I feel it. Everybody I talk to in my actor community feels it. There's this sense of like, oh God, where's the auditions? I haven't, I didn't work during the strike. I haven't worked. I mean, I've spoken to friends at all levels, people with a history of doing multiple series as series regulars, folks who work as one off guest stars. Everybody is feeling it to some degree. What I would say is I don't think this is not, I mean, certainly I think some of the delays of getting things back up to speed are the fact that, the writers went on strike as well. And when you look at the development period of a production, scripts had to halt and stop. So we're still playing catch up to the pre-production. So that takes time.
Mhm.
They only went back to work when they went off strike before we did, but it wasn't, it wasn't months and months and months of lead time. So everything was delayed. So I think there's just a lag. Also, there was a contraction that I believe was starting before the strike. And, you can go back and look at a myriad of articles, experts writing on the subject about this contraction, and studios pulling back and making cuts. That was already underway. And I think we're just feeling it. I think that compiled with the kind of delays and the slow ramp up to get production back up and running again, I think that combination makes it feel really intense. I don't believe that the contraction is a result of the strike by any means. I think it would have happened with or without it. Um,
Mm,
there was an unsustainable amount of content being produced, right? Like, the golden age of
yeah,
streaming and so many shows, and it just but then their whole thing was, they're crying poor. We don't make any money. So the studios had to, and the streamers have had to re-examine their business models. Um all the while, we've had to say like our members aren't making enough to pay the rent. So it's going to cost, so you're kind of pulling
yeah,
these levers. You can also, there's been articles nonstop about, studio layoffs, and their folks are being, there's layoffs as well. And I think it's just a very lean time for the industry as a whole. I think the dual strikes certainly played a factor just in terms of this delay and this pause and this kind of heightening of it, but I don't
yeah.
think in any way they were the cause of what we're experiencing. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know.
Sure. No, no.
I don't think it will fully. Again, just my personal opinion. I'm not sure we will fully rebound to the level of what it was when it was like peak TV and so many
Yeah.
shows on so many platforms. But I don't think it's going to be this level of painfully slow forever. I would hope that by next year, with more scripts in the bank and more new projects being greenlit, I read about them every day. Oh, this project and that
Mhm.
project. So it just takes time. Production. It's a production. It's a big undertaking, and
Yeah.
there's months and months and months of work that has to happen before we come on to a project.
No, no, I mean that's a good point. I appreciate your candor. You know, it's hard when you're in the thick of it to try and remain optimistic
Oh,
because
absolutely.
yeah, all you can think about is like how few auditions you, and for somebody like me, um, I graduated 2018,
Mhm.
nine 18 months after graduation, COVID.
Oh,
So COVID and then the lag from so like post COVID, okay, we're back. We figured it out. Then there's the lag. And then what, 9 months after that, a strike. So it's kind of, we're feeling all of these things. And even people who, like you said, have been out for a while, that COVID really shook things up. And then the strike shortly after. So I think we're feeling a combination of things. I agree with that.
and I'm glad you brought up that. I mean, I don't know, the pandemic, of course, and the global pandemic. So, like, that again, it just, that's kind of what kind of started the shift. And then I think people were like, okay, lean and mean, right? We're just in a cost savings mindset. And then, of course, you compound all these other things. But it's a really hard time for all actors. But I really empathize with, like, getting out of school and having been hit with, if you were someone, where that crossed the pandemic window or the strike window. But it's going to, the industry, much like many of our careers,
Yeah.
peaks and valleys. And I do believe it will get better.
No doubt, no doubt. Now, I got just two more questions for you.
Yeah.
I almost forgot to ask this question, which actually is one of the ones I'm really interested in, which is the success payment.
Mm,
So, part of the compensation package, correct me if I'm wrong, if a show is performing well, you get paid more because it's performing well, contrary to previously where I read a story about this writer who said, he's like, oh yeah, I wrote this film like 10, 15 years ago, and now it's on Netflix's top 10 and my residuals are the same. Like just that disparity there. So on paper that sounds great. My question is really, is there is I'm generally don't know, what's the other side of the coin look like? Is there concern that if a show is underperforming because now there's more transparency, if you have to give transparency for what's successful, then there's going to be transparency for what is not as successful? Do you think that's going to affect content that's being produced?
in terms of what remains on the platform, or the decisions whether shows get second seasons, that sort of thing.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
and some of the shows where maybe the studio is a big fan of it, maybe it's kind of like a personal project for certain. I'm not going to say name. There's a particular project on Amazon that like people kind of knew wasn't performing great, but the studio was really a big fan of it, and so it kept going. But it's like now, if like people can see the numbers of like this show is like costing money.
Right. I mean, I would say, so in terms of this bonus, I should just say it's kind of unprecedented and incredible that we achieved this, because it's a completely brand new independent stream of residuals, which is it. This is like in addition to the raises that we got for all residual structures, especially on streaming, which were much lower than linear television, and a big complaint of the members, rightfully so, when getting these tiny 10-cent checks for something on, it's just not enough. And you're
Yeah,
doing the same work. That's the thing. For the performer, you're delivering the same level of performance, whether your finished product airs on NBC primetime or airs on Peacock.
yep.
So that was a big thing. But just achieving this was huge. And the writers got it as well. And then the directors, I think, retroactively got a version of it as well. Um, but it is about transparency. And we believed, like, when a show is successful and they profit off of it because more people go to that platform, oh, what's this hit show on Netflix? Oh, I'm going to subscribe to Netflix. And that's money that they get in every month. And it's our performances on the shows that writers create that drives that viewership. And so there's a whole complicated formula that I won't get into, but that basically will um, establish what the top tier is that will be subject to this bonus payment.
Mhm.
Um, but in terms of your question, like, what's the risk of it? I think that these streamers, they've got the algorithms. They know all of this, with or without giving us the transparency into just the top performing shows. I think if they
Sure.
want a show on the platform, it's going to stay on the platform. And if something's not performing, it won't. You also, there's kind of been a wave of fans advocating. You've heard a couple stories, I'm sure, of shows.
Yeah.
Manifest was one. There's a
SWAT.
bunch. SWAT. Where you get enough of a fan base together, or a show that was on traditional network will move to streaming, and
Yeah.
find a new home. So that's happening. And so I think there's a lot of flexibility. I don't really see any negatives of it. I think that if people are like, oh, my show didn't, I'm on this show and it didn't hit the bonus and now I'm not getting a second season, I wouldn't necessarily correlate those.
Okay.
They know they have, again, these algorithms, as I understand it, really run and inform many of these decisions that they're making, based on all kinds of things. So they know, and they know anyway. And I think that the kind of trimming of content from platforms, I think that's part of the contraction that we were talking about earlier that was already underway.
Mhm.
I don't think it was a it's not caused because of our strike, but I think that it's tricky because now, it will cost them more money, but I also believe it should cost them more money because we bring the value, and without us, they don't have anything to
Boom.
show. What's sitting on the platforms if you don't have actors and writers?
Boom.
Yeah.
Without us, what do they have to show? I like that. We need to put that on a t-shirt. Cool. Final question. Whenever I have actors on the show, I ask them, because the show is called The Actor's Instrument, I like to ask, what is the quality that you feel you possess that sets you apart? And for you, I'm curious, like, what are the qualities that you possess that makes you such a champion for the union? It's a very selfless. I mean, obviously, you have a vested interest because you are an actor, but on some level, it's relatively selfless. Um, so yeah, what is it for you?
I
Uh,
think it's a combination of I really I have a hard time with injustices, and feeling like standing up for like the little person, and this isn't really like a. I'm not gonna diffuse it well into one quality, but just this sense of and maybe it's my work ethic. Maybe we'll call it that. A good work ethic. That instead of complaining, it's we all as actors, rightfully so. We all, oh, I don't have auditions. It's the state of, it's what drove me to union service in the beginning, the commercial contract, and noticing a lag in work. And I thought,
mhm,
well, maybe there's something to do to help. How can I actively be a part of something that might turn things around?
mm,
Um, so I think having a really strong work ethic and looking out for those, helping to be the voice for people, for the collective, and those that maybe don't feel comfortable speaking up and standing up, as
sure.
actors. We have this, I don't know, we're kind of programmed to feel I'm so lucky. I work so hard to just get the job that when I get the job, I have to just kind of shut up and do everything. And I'm not allowed to have an opinion, and I'm not allowed to raise a question if something doesn't look right on my contract.
Hmm.
And that one of my goals in my service is to kind of educate and help empower members to know that you do have a right to stand up, and you have a right to be treated fairly and be on a safe set and to be given wages where you can actually make a living doing this.
Mm. Wow. Well, Erin, thank you so much for the empowerment. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for thank you for your advocacy. Um, and yeah, I think the hard work and the not sitting around and waiting for things to happen for you, that translates directly to what all of us have to do on a daily basis as performers. So thank you again for giving us an inside scoop. Thank you for, more importantly, taking it upon yourself to be an advocate for all of us in the union. Um, and where can people keep up with you? What's your social media handle?
Oh, yeah, you can just put in my name, Erin Fritch, or it's at ErinJBJ8 on Instagram. You're going to get a lot of pictures of my kid and my cat, but I do share important union stuff as well from time to time.
Amazing. There you go, folks. Uh, Thank you, Erin. Thank
Yes.
you to everyone who's listened to this episode. Thank you for joining me. Before you go, please like, subscribe, turn on those notifications, and be sure to tap into the next episode of The Actor's Instrument. Till next time, y'all. Peace. Thank you for listening to The Actor's Instrument. I'm Hasia Muhammad, and you can follow me at Hasia Muhammad and the show at Actors Instrument Podcast on all social media platforms. The Actor's Instrument is a presentation of Red Letter Entertainment. Executive producers Adam Jellicourse, Serena Esposito, and yours truly. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and check us out at theactorsinstrument.com. We'll be back next Tuesday. Till next time, y'all. Peace.